Hi, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Looks like we are live. Hi. Happy Monday, everyone. We are kicking off the 12 days of brand archetypes. I'm so excited for this. I'm going to wait to intro this until I see somebody jump onto the live. But for all of you that are watching the replay, hi. I'm really, really, really excited for this event. This idea came to me just a couple days ago, and I'm really excited because we're going to be looking at your human design charts, but from the perspective of your brand archetype. Ooh, hey everybody. Say hi if you're here. Hi, Layla. Hi, G. It looks like I'm getting comments. It's a good day. Perfect. Ready to go. I love to hear that. Okay, so let's see. Hello, welcome. Yay, we're starting. We're starting the 12 days of brand archetypes. So, how this is going to work is we're going to do a live reading every single day starting today until I think May 3rd is when the 12 days run out. So, we're going to go over a brand archetype every single day. I'm going to talk about it to open the calls, and then I'm going to look at your charts. And I'm going to do it differently. I'm not going to look at the same elements of the chart for each archetype. I'm going to look at different parts and talk about why I'm looking at these parts and what it all means. But it's going to be great. So I'm also going to send you an email. And I'm going to repurpose that email into a Facebook post in this group that gives you a really good overview of the archetype and what that means in terms of just everything about your brand, because in addition to human design, brand archetypes are like the best kept secret that there ever has been in terms of attracting your dream clients. Awesome. So if you are on live with me, just say hi so I can see who's here. And then, so we are doing Aries rising today. We're kicking this thing off with the heroine archetype. So if you're Aries rising, tell me in the comments, because I love these live readings to get your feedback and to see if things are resonating with you and see if things are making sense. So I love all of the questions that you ask. So feel free to put as many questions as you want to in the chat. It really goes well with my teaching style to be able to see what you're asking and then dive deeper into those elements if we need more clarity around it. So also too, let me see if I can tag everyone. It doesn't look like it. Okay, I'll tag later, and then whoever's charts I look at, I will tag that person or those people in the comments after. Okay, cool. So let's jump right in. We are starting with the heroine archetype. Just a little, like, very high level overview of how this whole thing works. So when you show up in your brand as your archetype, meaning you are thinking like that archetype, you're feeling like that archetype, you're taking action like that archetype does, you are creating content aligned with the archetype, you have a brand message that speaks directly to that archetype, you create offers around the archetype, your visuals are aligned with the archetype. When your whole brand is your archetype, that makes you a magnetic force. And what happens is you are calling to and activating that same exact archetype in your dream client, in other people. So the people that show up in your world, you automatically know who they are because you know what primary archetype is activated within them. If you want more information about how that whole thing works and you want a deeper explanation, we went over that in the Magic is Real masterclass that we had over this past weekend. So if you want the link for the replay, let me know and you can sign up and watch it. You'll get instant access to the replay. So Anne said, how do we submit a chart? There is a post in the group for the brand archetypes. Let me get the link really quick. And you can put your chart on the corresponding brand archetype. So we won't have, I don't have room for extra Aries today, Aries rising, but if you're a different archetype, you can share it. Let me grab the link really quick and I'll put it into the comments. So this is how I do all live readings, is I always put up a post prompting you for your charts and you can share it there. People have asked me in the past if they can share their charts with me in DMs and things like that, and unfortunately the answer is no, because I just can't keep up with charts everywhere. But okay, so the heroine archetype. Now that we know kind of why we care about the brand archetype, so we use the rising sign because this is a huge part of your energetic personality, if you will. This is how you are how you're programmed to see the world, how you think, how you feel, and it's also a large part of how others see you. So it's just this very, very, very aligned part of you, and it's a huge part of you. And it's also, I firmly believe that the more intention and the more heart and the more why that we can put behind the actual pursuit of our businesses, the more success and the more fulfillment and the more impact and the more good we're going to do through our brands and through our businesses. So your rising sign really indicates who your soul came here to be. And I always like to pursue personal development through some kind of goal. And so having goals around your business and your brand is such a like it's a beautiful personal journey. It's the best personal journey you will ever go on. And your rising sign is that guiding force. So, your rising sign really just dictates everything and it makes all of the other parts of your human design chart really make sense and put some context behind it, right? Like, why are you designed like this? Why do you have this channel? Why do you have this gate? Why is this center open? Why is this center defined? And all of it is pointing back towards, well, this is because of your rising sign. This is who your soul came here to be. This is the full potential that is available to you as a human and in every single other pursuit that you do in your life, including your spiritual business. Okay, so, with the heroine archetype, the archetypes have lots of different names. So, archetypes are these innate human codes, if you will, that we all have within us and that we're all born knowing and understanding, regardless of where we were born, when we were born, how we were born, what we were born into, right? It doesn't matter what part of the world you're born into, it doesn't matter what part of history you're born into. Archetypes are human. We're born with this programming. So it's not this outside identity that we're trying to step into. It is this inner programming that we already have, but sometimes we have to remind ourselves of this programming or wake up this programming or essentially actively shift into the higher expression. So the heroine, she's also known as the hero. She is also known as the huntress or the champion or the athlete, like an Olympic athlete or a professional athlete is a really good example of the heroine archetype. She's also known as the rescuer. We see the heroine or the hero. Those words are interchangeable, but we see that expression in first responders, right? So people that show up at the scene of an accident or something like that, right? The first responders are a beautiful, beautiful example of the heroine archetype. But those are just examples. So when I say the word expression, what I mean by that is just one way that this archetype can show up and start doing life. So, expressions, there's an infinite amount of expressions, but sometimes we're more familiar with certain examples of archetypes than others. I also think it's really important to understand the stereotype that can be attached to the archetype because if you're ever not resonating with your brand archetype, it's likely because you are just thinking of the stereotypical version that we've seen of that archetype. And that's no fault of your own. That's what we see in movies, and that's what we see in books, and that's what we see in the media, and all of those things is like this really watered down version of the archetype. Or we see the low expression of the archetype. So, this isn't the low expression in media is not so much a problem with the heroine, but we do see it in like the magician or the ruler, which is also known as the queen, or the lover. And we'll talk more about that when we get into those archetypes. But for the heroine, one of the common expressions that we see that has kind of turned into a stereotype is the superhero. So, like Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, any of the Marvel characters, any of the DC characters, all of that stuff. And people love that, right? People love superhero movies. It's a huge, huge billions of dollars that go into those superhero franchises and things, and we love it. So if you're ever watching a superhero movie, that is totally waking up the heroine archetype within you. But she's so much deeper than that. She's so much deeper than just a superhero, like physical warrior kind of vibe. Um, Archetypes really point towards like the essence of something. Like I said, this isn't this external thing that we're trying to figure out how to become. This is programming. This is an identity that already exists within us, and it might be very active within you. If you resonate with your archetype immediately upon even just hearing the name, that means that that programming is already a big part of you. If you don't resonate with it, it's probably because conditioning and your childhood and society and all of those things has taught you to minimize that archetype and basically put that archetype to sleep, right? So the essence of the heroine archetype, there are three main components to her. The first one is courage, and I'll expand on all of these in just a second, but the first one is courage. The second one is alignment, so really aligning to something. The heroine archetype tends to do very well with goals, with like having some kind of vision for something because she needs to align to something specifically. It's very, very good for her energy, and it's how she's programmed to function. If you think of an athlete, right, they have a goal of winning. If you think of a first responder, they have a goal of getting to the accident, saving the life, putting out the fire, something like that. And then the third essence of the heroine archetype is power. The heroine is very, very, very strong and very capable and very able. So, with the heroine, as long as your brand is really built on those three things, so that again is courage, alignment, and power, then you can trust that you're in alignment and you are expressing and you are fulfilling and you're embodying that brand archetype. You don't have to have a brand that is like athletic focused or first responder focused, right? Or something like that. So I say this all the time, but I mean it. And I feel like heroine brands really have it lucky. I'm very jealous of heroine brands because I think that the marketing strategy and the storyline and all of that is like so clear. So, in order for the heroine brand to really um, tell the story fully, tell the archetypal story fully, they have to have some kind of bad guy. So the hero, right? The hero in all of the superhero movies that we've seen and all of the different stories involving some kind of hero, there's always a villain, right? There's always a bad guy. And that's true. That is a vital part of the heroine archetype story. It doesn't have to be as like blatant and stereotypical as like the superhero villain kind of situation, but any heroine brand needs to have some kind of bad guy that your brand is fighting. In the low expression, we do see this show up in the low expression. An example of that is social media when somebody gets canceled. And I'm not saying that people that get canceled aren't deserving of being canceled, but what happens is the group of people, the trolls or whoever, right, the people who decide to cancel this person, they are essentially putting on or they're awakening, they're stepping into the archetype of the hero, and the villain becomes the person that they're trying to cancel. So then they all rally together and get this person canceled. So that's like a low road expression, and the reason I'm using that as an example for the low road expression is because it's full of hate, it's full of blame, it's full of pointing fingers, and it's directed at another human. The high expression of really telling this hero villain story is where you are fighting, your brand is fighting, your messaging is fighting, your offers are fighting against some kind of ideology that is keeping people stuck. So, like a limiting belief, right? Or some kind of injustice in the system, or some kind of just bad part of life that could be better, right? Where you see, like, if this were destroyed, if this were defeated, things could be so much better. People could be so much freer. We could be so much happier. So, that's in my mind how I see the difference between the low expression of that storyline and the high expression. So, a really interesting example of the heroine archetype in a recent movie is the Barbie movie that came out this, when was that? Summer of 2023. It was a while ago now, but the one with Margot Robbie, and it was like a big deal, and I loved it. It was so good. But that is a heroine archetype movie. And the reason why is because the Barbies all are fighting against this villain, and the villain is the patriarchy. And it's funny, it's pink, it's glittery, they make light of it. But if you go and you watch the movie, whether you've watched it already and you're rewatching it or you watch it for the first time, you'll see it now. Like they're all rallying together and fighting against the villain, which is the patriarchy. So that's what we're going to look at in your charts today is like what could the possible what could the possible villain for your brand be? And this is really powerful because when you build a brand that is fighting against something that needs to be taken down, you build camaraderie, you build community just by default, right? Because you're going to attract other people that see that as well. And they're like, yeah, that does need to be defeated, right? Like, F the patriarchy. So if you resonated with the Barbie movie, it's because you agreed with their message that the patriarchy needed to be brought down. And what I'm not saying is that if you have a heroine brand, you have to be fighting against the patriarchy. I'm just using that as an example of a high level, high road, high expression heroine archetype fighting against something that's not another person. Hi, Catherine. I have an Aries moon too, Marianne. I think I told you that. Um, And if anyone is familiar with the goddesses, the goddess Artemis is a good example of the heroine as well because she is the huntress expression. Okay, so let's look at your charts. Another thing too that I already mentioned, but I want to expand on what I meant by it a little bit with the essence of the heroine. So she's all about courage, she's all about alignment, and she's all about power, right? She's very strong. Most of the time we see this portrayed and this physical strength, but it doesn't have to be physical at all. It can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be spiritual, it can be any kind of strength. But the courage part, right? So courage is really important for the heroine brand because you cannot be courageous. You cannot evoke courage. You cannot embody courage if you're not first scared, right? It's not courage if you're not scared first. So that's a huge thing for the heroine brand. If you think about it through the lens of your Aries rising, so the Aries archetype, Aries is the first of the zodiac signs. So Aries can be very impulsive, can be very rash, can be very like I'm going in, but that's a beautiful part of that archetype. We need that archetype in our society. We need that archetype to be the leader that doesn't really think and just does. Now, I do know that that can feel really contradictory, especially if you're a reflector, right? Or if you have emotional authority. So learning how to balance that and learning how to honor that part of yourself while also following your human design authority is a big part of the work. But, Aries is a leader in her own right. She really is here to be the first to go up the mountain, right? Be the first to jump over the cliff. And it doesn't mean that she's not scared. It just means that she has learned how to let her courage conquer her fear. So that could just be a simple message of your brand right there, right? Where you're portraying and positioning fear as the villain and courage is the thing that conquers it. So the more scared you are as an Aries rising brand, as a heroine brand, and the more that you step into courage, the more you're going to really be aligning with that archetype. That's like the biggest message that heroine brands are here to offer people is like, do it scared, right? Learn how to hold your fear and move forward anyways. So we're going to talk about that in conjunction with your charts in just a second. But let me know in the comments if anybody has any questions about the heroine archetype or Aries rising before we go into it all. Okay, I don't see anything coming through. Cool. Okay, so we're going to look at your charts and we're going to explore fears that might be coming up for you and therefore for your brand. And that is an invitation to really build up your courage around that. And then we're also going to talk about potential villains for your brand because in order to really be telling the full storyline of the heroine brand, you have to have some kind of villain. And we are high integrity, high love brands over here. So we're not going to create a brand that is fighting against another human, right? We want to fight against some kind of ideology or some kind of issue that currently exists in humankind. Okay, so let me see in the comments who told me that they're Aries rising. If you have not already shared that in the comments, tell me. Brenda said she's Aries rising. Anybody else on the line Aries rising right now? Brenda, did you share your chart on that thread? Let me look. You did. Cool. Okay, I'm going to start with your chart, Brenda. So we're going to talk about the splenic gates and we're going to talk about the undefined centers. And I mentioned this at the beginning, but I'm not going to be looking at the same aspects of the human design chart with all the other archetypes. I'm going to look at specific parts of the chart that I think are really relevant for the storyline of this specific archetype. So each live is going to be different, and we're going to be exploring different parts of the chart, which I'm excited about. So I chose today to explore the gates of the spleen and the undefined centers for two reasons. So the gates of the spleen really give us insight into like our natural fears, our caveman fears, if you will, our primal fears. So the fears that really helped humankind like survive, right? That really allowed the species to continue and to evolve and to not get eaten by tigers, right? So these are the kind of fears that back in the day we needed because it told us like don't leave the cave, there's tigers out there, right? Or don't walk that way, you're going to fall over a cliff, like those kind of primal fears. But they don't serve us anymore because now it's still the same signal our brain is giving us when we're trying to send an email to our email list, right? Don't send that email, there might be a typo and you might die. I know that sounds extreme, but these are the programmings that you have within you that are telling you don't do that, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, imminent death, imminent death, imminent death kind of thing. And so while of course it still serves us if we're like, let's say, walking down the street in the evening and you have that hit of like don't walk down that dark alley, like listen to that, we need that. That is survival programming that we want to honor and listen to, right? But when it comes to our businesses and when it comes to like sitting behind a computer, it is scary. That fear is real, but it's not going to lead to imminent death. So the more that we can understand that those fears that we naturally have within us that are telling us those things that are just simply not true, the more that we can allow the courage to overcome and to conquer the fear. Okay, let me check the chat really quick. Yay, Catherine. What is your rising sign? Do you know? Skylar is an Aries rising as well. Cool. Oh, Catherine, I just saw you said that you are Aries rising. Marianne said, don't they also provide some of the most clairs? Yep, they do. They do. Yeah, the spleen is the oldest center in the human design chart. So there are so many different ways to work with it and so much to learn about yourself. The spleen is crazy in a good way. Okay, so let's start with those fears of the spleen. So the way that I like to do these lives is I always try to think of it like, how can I read one person's chart but make it as relevant for everybody else that's listening as well. So if you have your chart in front of you, then go ahead and pull it up. I have a chart here. I'm very techie with these, and I just hold up a piece of paper to the camera. So what we're looking at is this triangle here. And my screen is reversed, I think. So if you're looking at your chart, it's the triangle to the far left. And it doesn't matter if it is colored in, the whole triangle, or if it's white as we're talking about these things. But what I want you to look at are the numbers that I'm talking about and if they have a circle around them that's colored in. So Brenda has a lot of the spleen gates defined, which is awesome because you probably have one as well for anyone that is following along. Okay, so Brenda, as I go through this and talk about this with your chart, let me know if this resonates with you. One of the things that has really helped me so much in learning human design and like actually understanding it is always asking other people like, does this resonate with you? And then listening to how it has shown up for them in their lives. And that's really helped me to understand it in such this multifaceted way. So I really love to hear how anyone else experiences this energy. So Brenda, tell me how it feels for you, and then anyone else that wants to share your takeaways or your experience with it, it's more than welcome. Okay, so the first splenic gate that you have defined is gate 48. And this one is called the gate of depth. And what it brings with it is this primal fear of inadequacy, not being enough. And just imagine that through the lens of the heroine archetype. So the heroine, she's the hero, right? She is here to save the day. She is here to go get the baby out of the burning building. She is here to fight the tiger, right? She's a fighter. She's a warrior. She is strong. She's capable. That's a really big part of a heroine brand as well. So anything that you can do, just a side note, anything that you can do in your content or your messaging or your offers to help people develop their skills and develop their capability in some kind of aspect, the more the heroines that you attract to you are going to get stronger, right? So imagine though, as a hero, being called, like, let's just paint this into a really vivid storyline. So you're a hero, right? Like you were born into your life and you find out that you have this call in your life to be a hero. But you all of a sudden feel so inadequate, so unable, so not worthy of the call, right? So this is like a huge, huge, huge thing to work through for yourself as the heroine archetype, but also to help your clients with. Because the way that this works is when you show up in the full expression of your brand archetype, you are calling in people with that same archetype activated. So the heroine is here to serve other heroines, right? You are here to be on this life pursuit of getting stronger and getting more capable and getting more courageous, right? And aligning tighter to something and to really like unleash your full power. As cheesy as that expression is, that is what the heroine is here to do. And then ultimately conquer something that's a problem, right? Conquer some kind of villain. So as you do that, and as your brand does that, and as your brand becomes stronger, and as you become stronger, every single other person who's on your email list or who's in your Facebook group or who follows your Instagram page, they're getting stronger as well. So let me see. Brenda said, "Oh my gosh, this is a constant internal fight, not feeling adequate or imposter syndrome." Yeah, and I think like most of us just as entrepreneurs can relate to that, but I want you to really imagine it through, and more than imagine, I want you to feel it through the lens of your heroine, right? The part of you that is called to save the world. Like and we see this in a lot of the superhero movies, right? Their origin stories where I'm not a big superhero fan, so let me know any examples. Hi, Holly. Let me know any examples that are coming to mind that would be a good example of this. But like the wimpy kid, right? The scrawny kid in school, the one that got picked on. Was Spider-Man like one of those where he wasn't like obviously like this big bulky guy, like he was kind of scrawny and stuff, and it's like, how could I ever be a hero? How could I ever be that strong? How could I ever have that much power? So that, we know this as imposter syndrome, but gate 48, if that is defined in your chart, in your spleen, if that number has a colored in circle around it and you are Aries rising, this is a huge, huge, huge invitation from your soul to like go into the deepest journey that you possibly can with that. And that is going to start with mindset work for sure, right? Like looking at your affirmations. What are you telling yourself every day? Are you telling yourself that you're incapable? Or are you telling yourself you're strong and you're able and you can figure things out? But on top of that, it also needs to be mixed with really, really intentional action. So getting better at your skills, right? Getting better at your getting stronger, however that looks for you. So maybe that means that you feel a little bit inadequate. We're just going to use an example. Maybe someone's a life coach and they feel inadequate with their clients. Maybe they're on one-to-one client calls and they feel like they're not doing a good job of guiding their clients in those calls. They're not really helping their clients get to the breakthroughs that they want to be able to lead them to, right? So that might mean diving into their coaching skills, taking a coaching program, or really setting a goal to work with 5 clients a week and really pay attention, really refine your tools that you use, and maybe you rewatch the recordings of the calls and make notes from a place of self-compassion, of course, but you make notes on places in the session where you think that you could have used a tool better or said something different, right? Or it could look like with your business, making a goal that scares you, right? So, as the heroine, the more scared you are, the better, because courage is everything for your brand. But making a goal maybe of going live once a week for a month, or maybe every other week for 2 months, or something that feels doable but scary. And really pushing yourself to your edge, right? Really learning how to hold that fear in you and still show up. So, what can you do, first of all, in your thinking? What are you telling yourself? What are those affirmations? Aries is the I forgot the exact terminology, but basically, like the message of Aries is I am. So, telling yourself things like, I am a hero. And y'all, this is a really embarrassing story, and I've never shared it with anybody, but I'm about to share it with you right now. So, I'm Aries moon, which means I do have a large part of like my identity is in this archetype for sure. And last year, I think it was last year, at the end of the year with my Spotify wrap up, you know how it tells you like all the songs that you listen to over the year? My number one song was Roar by Katy Perry, because I set really big goals and I like continually work on aligning myself to them. And there's a line in that song that says, I am a champion. And I would listen to it on my walks over and over and over and over and over because I could feel like when I heard that affirmation and I would say it to myself, I am a champion, I am a champion, I am a champion over and over and over. And I would also visualize myself like shooting a basketball and being like further and further and further away from the hoop and like shooting it and like imagining myself like getting the ball into the basket every single time. So, whatever you need to do, if you're Aries rising, if you are the heroine archetype, in order to awaken that hero within you, right? Awaken the lion, awaken the conqueror, whatever word there resonates with you. You can also, I like to do this when I'm aligning to a goal, like a big goal, and I like goals personally. So, find whatever word resonates with you there. You can try intention, you can try outcome, you can try vision, right? You can try result. If goal works for you, great, but having some kind of like tangible, measurable thing that you want to attain. And I like to picture myself like with a bow and arrow with a target that's like really far in the distance, and I like to imagine myself like shooting the arrow and getting it. So anything that can help you really feel the feeling of alignment, right? First of all, getting very clear on what are you aligning to and then practicing over and over. So in order to conquer this fear of inadequacy, how are you speaking to yourself, right? Are you saying I am statements that are full of power and full of confidence? Confidence is a really powerful emotion for the heroine archetype. Also, too, you know, you can say stuff that's like, I am resourceful. I know how to figure things out. So it might feel fake to all of a sudden be like, I'm a winner, I'm a champion. But if you really root into your ability to be able to problem solve and to figure things out, that can really help with that fear of inadequacy of like, you know what? Like, even if I come up against something that I don't know how to do in the immediate, I know I can figure it out. I'm resourceful, I'm scrappy, I'm determined, like anything like that. So, whatever feels good for you. And then going on some kind of adventure to increase your skills. There is this term that I learned when I was when I was starting my business and I was doing graphic design and brand design, and the fear of inadequacy. I have Gate 48 as well, and this was a big one because I didn't have a lot of the graphic design skills that I saw other graphic designers on the internet that had. So there's this term that really was really powerful when I learned it. And it's called, what is it called? Conscious incompetence. So it's when you're conscious of your lack in ability. You know that your skills aren't there yet, but you're practicing, right? You are taking measures for them to get there. And that can be really powerful to say, you know what, like I'm a beginner at this, or I'm still learning, or there's other people that have skills that are more advanced than mine, but that's okay because I am showing up every day and it's my mission to get better at this. So, conscious incompetence can be a really powerful tool for Gate 48 if that's defined for you. Okay, let me see what y'all are saying. I do too. Me and my daughter listen to that song more than often. I love that song for that reason. Like I really do feel like a powerful hero when I listen to that song. Okay, cool. So next, let's look at gate 57. So this is also defined in Brenda's chart. And if you're looking at your spleen, which if you're looking at your chart, it's the triangle to the far left, see if the number 57 is circled in, is colored in. If it is, that means it's defined for you. So gate 57 is called the gate of the gentle, and it is it's the most intuitive gate that there is. So Marianne just asked something about the clairs, and gate 57 gives some good insight into like some clairvoyant gifts and things like that, intuitive gifts. But that's a conversation for another day. So gate 57 holds fear of the future. Fear of the future, right? Fear of what's going to happen. And so this is an interesting one to work with and to work through if you find yourself like feeling stuck and not taking action, or if you have some big goals or some big visions, yet you're not really like getting the ball rolling on them, then it might be because you have fear of the future, right? And so this part of this fear is fear of change, right? It's like, okay, well, if I do start my business, if I do launch this, or if I do close my one to ones and I go more into group coaching, like things are going to change. So there's fear with that. Um, and I think in order to conquer this and to really work with this, like the same conversation that we just had about gate 48, being like really rooting into whatever makes you feel confident in yourself, confident in your current abilities, confident in your abilities to learn new skills if you need to, right? Confidence in your ability to pivot, right? I always think of that Friends episode when they're moving the chair up the stairs, pivot. But with 2020, that was a good example of this, right? There's just so much unknown, especially if there's external things that are just exacerbating that feeling. But any kind of new adventure, any kind of up leveling, any kind of expansion, any kind of initiative is going to bring up fear of the future, especially if you have gate 57 defined. So, another interesting thing with that Aries archetype, especially for Aries rising, is there is a lot of initiating energy within this archetype. And that can feel contradictory if you are any kind of human design type except a manifester. Because manifestors are here to initiate, but the rest of us are here to wait for something. So, the art here is learning where are you still in alignment with your human design while you initiate. And the general rule of thumb here, always listen to your authority. That's going to tell you for sure. But the general rule of thumb here in terms of initiating things is if it's anything to do with things that you love, right? Projects that you're working on, programs or initiatives in your business, anything that has to do with like the foundation of your business or your life, you don't have to wait for someone else. So the more that you can focus on just really pouring in that initiating energy into, you know what, like I'm ready for a rebrand and I'm going to initiate that in my business. Like you don't have to wait for somebody else to invite you to do a rebrand or something like that, right? Or if you're like, I really have this program on my heart and I really want to create it, or I really want to start showing up on Instagram or something like that. But when it has to do with other people, that's when you need to wait for an invitation if you're a projector, or if you're a generator or manifesting generator, wait to respond. Okay. My best friend forever of the last 30 years went to SCAD and is a graphic designer as well. So fun. That is my Saturn. Yes, resonates with me so much. You have a cool chart. Okay, so the next one is gate 44. So this one is in the spleen as well. So take a look at your splenic center and see if the number 44 is colored in. So gate 44 is called the gate of patterns. And the fear, remember, we're talking about primal fears here. So these fears that are programmed within us for our survival, which have served us very, very, very well and still do occasionally. But when it comes to things like internet marketing and internet business, they are a little bit they kind of lie to us. So, gate 44 is fear of the past. And this can show up in a couple different ways. It can show up as fear of repeating past mistakes. So, for example, if you have any kind of launch trauma, if you have any kind of past business trauma, this can show up again. So, for example, if you started a business in the past and that business didn't make the kind of revenue that it needed to in order to stay open and you had to close it, right? And I'm sure like any kind of experience like that was hard and it was gut wrenching and it was traumatizing to some extent. And so gate 44 holds on to that and keeps that fear. It's like, well, what if we launch a business again and it fails again? Or another way that this can show up is fear of your past catching up with you. So, like, if you have any kind of what you would perceive as skeletons in your closet or anything like that, then and you're like, you know what, I'm really like scared of being visible because I don't want people to find this thing out that I did before or that happened to me or that I was part of or whatever it might be. So any kind of like past regrets that you have, past mistakes, all of that kind of stuff. And the way to really work with this and move through it is to alchemize it, right? Like first of all, to very much acknowledge and accept and to feel that it was a dark part. It was a dark part of your story. It was hard. It it was it left you very tender. It left you, crumpled on the floor. Whatever that experience was like. Not bypassing that or not minimizing that, but really like holding yourself through that and working with a professional if you need to. But then also too really learning. So, alignment's a huge part, like we've already talked about with the heroine archetype. And what I mean by alignment is what are you thinking about, right? What are you thinking? Like, what are your thoughts pointing toward? So, for example, if you're like, oh my gosh, like we can't do another launch because what if it fails again and no one signs up? Well, that is a possibility, but you know what else is a possibility? You do the launch and 100 people sign up, right? 10 people sign up, 20 people sign up. So a huge part of alignment is directing your mind. Where is it thinking? What future projections is it feeding you? And when you notice that, when you notice your mind saying, "Ooh, what if? Like, what if this happens? What if that happens?" Alignment means directing your mind to, "Okay, well, what if this happens?" And really feeling into and really picturing yourself winning. So winning is a good future vision, future memory to practice as the heroine archetype, because she wants to win. She is here to win. There is a competitiveness to you, whether it is in a classic way, right, where you like to compete against others, or if it's more of like, okay, this was my goal that I hit last time I did this. Now I want to get to this bigger goal. So really imagining yourself winning, crossing the finish line, right? Like hitting the number, whatever works for you in terms of visualization or feeling or listening or however you do that. So Gate 44, just notice like you can write down, you might need to, like, a forgiveness list is really powerful here. Like, write out all of those past memories of hurt that you still have, of things that are bringing up fear and worry. And just notice if your brain is giving you any of those, well, what if this happens again? And then forgive those memories, forgive those people that were involved, forgive yourself. That can be really, really powerful for releasing a lot of stuck energy that comes with Gate 44. Okay, so Brenda doesn't have gate 50. I am going to be looking at other charts too, so we'll get to that in a second. Her last one is gate 32. So gate 32 is called the gate of duration. Gate 32, it is all about really having this gift of being able to how do I want to say it, like sustain something because you know what is sustainable for you. So it's going into something with like a long-term vision, but adjusting it and changing it and designing it in a way that feels sustainable for you. So duration is the goal with gate 32. Gate 32 doesn't like change. It doesn't like sporadicness. It wants to basically start on a path and just walk down that path forever. But as we know, life doesn't really work like that. And so anytime gate 32 notices that there's change in the air, right? Or like combined with other things like gate 57, fear of the future, that kind of thing, it can kind of start to freak out. So gate 32 has this innate fear of change. So kind of just like what we were saying with gate 57, really, and gate 48 as well, really working on building up that identity around you being someone that can handle change, right? Maybe you even enjoy change. Aries rising, the heroine, she does really well with challenges, right? With obstacles. That's what she's here to do. She's here to conquer obstacles. So kind of painting a picture where change or just when things start to shift, like seeing that as a new obstacle to defeat, right? A new challenge to get through can feel really empowering for the heroine archetype. And one thing I do want to mention about the heroine archetype is she is so amazing. She's so strong. I do think that she gets overlooked a lot in terms of the brand archetypes because she's not as like sparkly as some of the others, but I think that's a false representation. She's incredible. She's such an incredible archetype. And I forgot why I just said that. Oh, but her journey isn't easy. She is so capable. She's the most capable of all of the archetypes, meaning like throw anything at her and she will conquer it. But her journey, like her day to day, like the way that you're gonna feel day to day is not gonna feel great. Courage doesn't feel great, right? Overcoming our obstacles doesn't feel great, but you know what does feel really great is the winning, is the victory, is that moment, is that conquering. So really feeling that ahead of time, really focusing on that, letting that be your fuel and your motivation for continuing to do the hard work that is required of the heroine archetype. Okay, so with gate 32, another fear that's attached to this is fear of failure, right? What if I try and I fail? What if I try and I flop? And that for the heroine archetype is death. It's death. It's imminent death. The heroine is here to win. So the idea of failure of any kind can really, really be crippling. It can be paralyzing. So if you're noticing that you are the heroine archetype and you have gate 32 defined in the spleen, if it's colored in, then that means, and you're not taking action, right? You're not showing up, you're not getting visible, you're not doing the things that you want to do or that you know you should be doing. It's probably because you have that crippling fear of failure holding you back. So one thing that you can do is really, really, really practice this alignment here, right? Continually align back to that moment where you win, moment where failure was defeated. You didn't fail. Also, this looks like rewriting what your definition of failure is. Maybe you do a launch and you don't hit the goal the first time, but you know what? You'll probably hit it the third time. But for you as the heroine, really getting clear on the only way that I can fail is if I quit. That's really, really powerful, you know, and then also too, um, letting go of some of the things that you are falsely telling yourself means that you failed, like if you have to rest or things like that, or not hitting the mark on the first time can be really, really powerful for the heroine. Brenda said, this is so on point. Gate 32 has kept me from pivoting from my clients. Ooh, I love that. Isn't it so helpful too to like look at it through the lens of the heroine? And one thing too, this goes for all of the archetypes, but what I really like to do is to use external examples of these archetypes to really like pump myself up and wake up this archetype within me. So for the heroine, you know, go watch some superhero movies, go watch Wonder Woman, or look up like Olympic athletes Instagram accounts and watch their videos, right, of them working out or them like doing the thing, getting the trophy, whatever it might be. There's a million different examples, but like really feeding your brain with those strong examples of your archetype is a great, great way. And it almost feels like cheating because it's so easy, because that's how archetypes work. It's like when you see that archetype in action, it immediately wakes it up in you. So also too, being really careful if you are around people that have that like defeatist attitude, right? Where it's like, well, why should I even try? I'm just going to fail. Like really, really being careful to what you're feeding your mind is super powerful for archetype activation. Okay, so let me go through. We have another Aries rising on the line. Skylar, I'm going to pull up your chart and see what your... Okay, so she has gate 48 defined too, and that's her only one. Skylar, did that resonate with you with gate 48, with the fear of inadequacy, of not being enough, like through the lens of the heroine? Okay, so Caitlin shared her chart. So she has... We already talked about all of those gates. I just want to make sure I cover all of them, but I want to look at specific people's charts so I can say their names. Okay, good. So here's Michelle. So Michelle, wait, we already talked about that one too. I'm going for 50, 28, and 18. So if any of you are Aries rising, Catherine, do you have 50, 28, or 18 defined in your spleen? Ooh, Terry does. I don't think she's on, but I will speak to those. Skylar said totally. Good. Catherine, tell me what your, if you're still on, tell me what your defined splenic gates are. And that way we can ask you if it's resonating. 50 and 18, perfect. Okay, so gate 50 is called the gate of values. And this one, the fear that's attached with it is fear of responsibility. So this is huge, 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 huge for the heroine archetype, because think about this through the lens of a firefighter, the responsibility that comes with that, right? Or a paramedic, right? Or an emergency room doctor, or just a doctor of any kind, right? You have literal life in your hands. The fear that comes with that, or the fear that comes with even the idea of that, is crippling. So remember, we're looking at this stuff because I really want to help you activate the heroine and like turn up to full volume her ability to feel courageous, your ability to feel courageous. Courage does not feel good at all. And it's such like a mind, I don't want to say a bad word, but a mind F when you think about courage, because it's such a powerful emotion. You can create so much by feeling courageous, but it feels awful to feel courageous, right? Feels awful. So, with gate 50, that fear of responsibility through a brand, right? You are here as spiritual entrepreneurs. We want our brands to really be impactful and to really help people's lives, right? Really transform lives. But there's that question with gate 50 that comes like, well, what if I'm like leading them incorrectly? Gate 50 is a big leadership gate. And so it's like, if you have thoughts you might not even recognize it at first, but dig into this. If you have thoughts of like, well, what if I'm leading them incorrectly? What if I'm wrong? What if this doesn't actually work? What if it doesn't work for them? So if you're like holding on to any kind of responsibility around their future, that's a big sign that gate 50 is showing up and it's keeping you from moving forward. So ways that you can work on this is really, 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 I have gate 50 as my conscious sun, and so this was a big one for me. It's like the more visible I get, the more clients I get, the more responsibility I have. What if I'm not cut out for that? What if this isn't right for me? What if I'm doing it wrong? What if I'm leading them wrong? So the more that you can really root into the belief and the truth that you are called to do this, right? That your method, your tools, your programs, your offers, your systems, all of it works. And the more that you can prove that to yourself by looking at your own evidence and repeatedly looking at the evidence and the results that your clients are getting, I have found very helpful because, again, our hearts are really good hearts, right? We are very integrity led people. And so if there's any kind of voice in our head that's telling us that we are doing something wrong by people or that we might be hurting people in some kind of capacity, we're not going to want to do it. So the more that you can really validate that scared part of your mind, right? And remind yourself like, no, like we're leading them correctly. We're called to be leaders. We're good leaders. We are effective leaders. We are capable leaders. We're confident leaders. We're competent leaders. The more gate 50 will be mollified, right? The more it will start to relax. So I really like to use that outside evidence, looking at the things that my clients have created through my systems, through my leadership, through my programs, and really like reminding myself and reminding that voice and quieting that voice of, no, it works. Like this is good. This is really good. And also too, I like to really focus on the power that my clients have, right? Like I'm not forcing anybody into this. I'm not coercing anybody into this. I'm not manipulating anybody into this. Like they're grown adults with their own free will choosing to come into my world because they feel the potential, right? They feel the magic, they feel the connection, and they trust me. So those two things have been really effective for me personally with Gate 50. But yeah, any kind of fear of responsibility. So if you're noticing yourself being hesitant in any kind of capacity to up level or to start or to get more visible or to get bigger or to charge more, right? Or to even start speaking about bigger results that your work gets people, and you're feeling stuck around that, you're feeling paralyzed around that, you're feeling like your voice is gone around that, that's gate 50 showing up. Um, so Catherine, let me know if that resonates for you. And then anybody else that has gate 50, let me know if that resonates. But with the heroine archetype, she is here. She has a lot of responsibility, right? What is it from Spider-Man? His uncle says to him, this is the movie from like 2000 with Toby Maguire, is that his name? But his uncle is like, with great power comes great responsibility. So this is kind of, those of you that are Aries rising, so the heroine archetype with gate 50, this is like a huge conundrum that can come with this archetype because you are all about great power. You have great power literally programmed into you, but with great power comes great responsibility. So this looks like really, really, really building up your own faith and trust in your own heart and your own mission, right? And your own motives. That's really powerful. There are several archetypes out there that are scared of their own power. The magician, the ruler, or the queen is what I call her. The heroine. There's others, but they're really, really scared of their own power because they are so powerful. And we've seen this storyline depicted a lot, right? Where brands or people or leaders or whoever get really powerful and then they like kind of flip, right? They become bad. They start to do bad things to other people and stuff like that. So we've seen that storyline modeled, which is why we have that fear. So the more that you can remind yourself of your motives, of the intention, of the reason, and of the why, the more Gate 50 is going to feel less like a burden and more like a gift. There's a lot of integrity that comes with Gate 50. Okay, so next let's talk about Gate 18. So Gate 18, it's this one is called the Gate of Evaluation. And so this one, for those of you that have it, as the heroine especially, it's going to resonate really big. But Gate 18 has this fear of not being perfect. So it's perfectionism. Perfectionism and like fear of not being perfect in the sense that if you send out an email with a typo, you feel like you're going to die. Like that kind of extreme. So the high expression of gate 18 shows up as being very detail oriented, right? Being a really good proofreader, or noticing typos right away, or noticing when graphics are unaligned in an image, or anything like that. And that's a good thing, right? But when your brain is telling you, like, if this is not perfect, we are going to die, that isn't true and it's not sustainable. And plus, what is perfection, anyways, right? So with gate 18, it really is working with this is like going through this identity shift of, we are not here to be perfect, but we are here to be excellent. So I've noticed in the online space that it tends to be like one side of the spectrum or the other, in terms of like people trying to be super 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 perfect with their work, and most of the time that shows up is them not putting anything out, or people being really really sloppy in their work and not having any kind of pride or respect in what their actual like final product looks like. However, I do think that excellence is really important, and I do think that there's a lot of space for it in the online brand industry, or the online industry for online brands. I think excellence is a really high expression quality. And it's something that the hero naturally wants to exude. The hero is here to push limits, right? Push boundaries, push records, like any kind of the world records and all of that stuff. Like the heroine archetype is the one that's like, that's the current world record for that. I'm gonna beat that. So the heroine is always about like, how can I get better? How can I expand, right? How can I do this bigger? How can I pursue excellence? So gate 18 is all about letting go of the idea of perfection, because again, what even is perfection, right? Letting go of that idea and instead replacing it with the pursuit, the relentless pursuit of excellence. And there's lots of excellent brands out there. I am from Dallas, and I love, love, love to watch the show. What is it even called? It's called the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders Making the Team, and it's about the auditions each year for the Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders. And one of my favorite things about that enterprise, about that brand, is they are continually pursuing excellence, right? They are seeing how they can find the best dancers, the best athletes to be part of the team, because that is one of their non-negotiables in terms of how they show up. They show up with excellence. So that's a really 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 good way to really allow the magic of gate 18 to come through as the heroine brand, but to do it in a way where you are showing up, right? You are being seen and you are being visible. And then if you do put out something that you're not proud of, or somebody criticizes, right? Or they send you a message and they say, hey, there's a typo on your sales page, or anything like that. Like, how do you deal with criticism? How do you deal with self criticism? And how do you deal with criticism from others? And remember, everything, like, nothing has to be the final piece either. You can put out a program, doing it to the best of your current ability and with the full intention of revising it later, right? Revising it on another round, making it better. So there's lots of different ways that you can tackle that, but I really like transmuting it from perfection to excellence, because like I said, there's a lot of space for excellence in this industry, and I think that that's a beautiful way to still stay on the high end of that spectrum, but not have the unsustainable and the self-sabotaging mentality of perfection. Okay, so the last one was gate 28. So gate 28 is called the gate of the game player. And this is an interesting one because the fear that's with it is this fear of death, or a fear of basically living a life without any purpose. So the fear of death thing shows up in like, if you have any kind of irrational fears, so fear of flying or a fear of heights, and not to say that those are necessarily irrational, but you know, where it's very unlikely, like it's not actual imminent danger. It is scary, there is a chance, but are you going to let that fear of flying keep you from traveling the world, that kind of thing. So if you're noticing that you do have fears that you could argue are legit, right? Like you could argue like, okay, yeah, like that's a good thing to be scared of, but is it keeping you from doing something that you really are longing to do? um and so that could look like, you know, for your brand, it could look like with your brand messaging, are you holding back on really expressing your full truth because you're scared that people are going to have pushback around it, right? Do you have an unpopular opinion, so to speak, or an idea or a way or a perspective that you think is going to ruffle some feathers, and you haven't shared it yet, even though your heart really wants to, because you're scared that you're going to get attacked online for it? So that's something, of course, to root into your authority and to listen to your authority to know what to do next about that. But that's a good example of how that could show up in the online space. Um, a deeper part of the fear of gate 28 is this fear that you're going to get to the end of your life and realize that none of it meant anything. And I know that sounds really dark and really heavy, but that is like one of the existential crisis moments that gate 28 brings with it. So, really reminding yourself of the reason why you're doing this, right? Of the purpose behind it. Really, if you don't have that clear yet, look at your incarnation cross. That can help you get deep clarity on your brand's big why, right? The reason why you're showing up in the first place, the reason why you're pursuing this in the first place. And that can help with gate 28 and really remind yourself and remind that primal part of your brain that this is purposeful. There is meaning behind it. There is reason behind it. So the more meaningful you can make every single part of your brand and every single part of your day, the more you're going to be working with that energy of gate 28 and the high expression. Okay, so what time is it? It's right at the hour. So I guess we don't have time today to go into the undefined centers like I was planning. But what questions do you have about the heroine archetype? Are you struggling with any parts of it? Are you resonating with the essence of her? Um, Tell me what's coming up for you. I'm watching the comments right now to see if anything new comes through because we can definitely dive into some Q&A. Okay, I don't see anything new coming through. So I guess we'll call it a day for the heroine. Cool. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I'm going to send out. Yay! Oh, Brenda, I love that. Brenda said this has been so helpful. I'm going to make my heroine playlist now. Yeah, music is really powerful for the heroine. I love that. Share that with us if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to, I would love to see that or hear it. That's awesome. And that's very aligned with your gate 57. The 57 is all about auditory stuff. Gee, thank you. So it's halfway written. I'm gonna finish writing an email to y'all about the heroine, but it just basically everything that we talked about today, I'm gonna put in writing and email it to you so that you have that just about the heroine and who she is at her core and her essence. So remember, the thing with archetypes is we tend, all of us do this, our brains do this, we tend to have these preconceived ideas of who this archetype is, right? And what we're really doing is like focusing on stereotypes that we've seen before that don't tell the whole story. So all you have to do in your brand is to focus on the core essence of the archetype, and there's a million different expressions that she might show up as, and people might innately recognize that, right? They might see, oh, that brand is the hero for sure, or it might be a more unique version of the hero that the world hasn't seen before. And both of those are correct, right? There's not one right way to do it and one wrong way to do it, not at all. So really, as long as you're rooting into courage, as long as you're working on alignment, and by that I mean having some kind of extrinsic goal, external goal, and then intrinsically aligning to that every single day with your thoughts and your feelings and your actions. That is alignment. And then power, right? Really exploring what that means for you. Are you scared of your power? Are you denying your power? Are you aligned with your power, right? Are you embodying it? Are you using it? And then working on the fear of responsibility if that's part of it, and then all of those other fear gates that we talked about through the lens of the hero. And so, do you have an order you are doing the archetypes? Yes, I'm going in order of the zodiac. So, tomorrow we're doing Taurus rising, which is the lover. And then Wednesday, that's Wednesday, right? So, today's Monday, Tuesday. Yeah. So, Wednesday, I'm doing Gemini rising. I have a link on that original post that I shared with y'all above. If you click on that, you'll see the link for my ad event calendar, which has all of the days and times for each of the archetypes. I'm doing them at different times each day because of time zones and all of the things. And then I'm going to make the events as we go. I didn't want to make 12 events on one day because I felt like that would be overkill. So I'm doing those, I'm spreading those events out. So you'll be able to find a Facebook event for it as we get closer, and then also look at my ad event calendar. Yay! Awesome, everyone. And then also, too, I want to say I will be sending you an email every day for 12 days. If you don't want to get those, just reply back to me and tell me, and I won't send them to you. Because if you unsubscribe, you'll unsubscribe from my entire email list, which is fine if you want to do that. That's cool, too. But if you just want to opt out of those 12 days, just let me know. And then that way you can stay on and get other emails and stuff like that. Awesome, people. Um, you guys are amazing. And I'm so glad. This is so fun. It feels like a party. So thank you again for your time and for your attention. And then, yes, we shall carry on. Keep your eye out for the email about the heroine today. And then if any questions about the heroine comes up, put them on the comments here and I will answer them. And then if you're watching the replay, feel free to share your takeaways and if anything resonated with you. All right, everybody, have a great day. Bye.